Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association's Facebook page. And in our series of Share Your Story today, we're going a bit international, and I will be joined in a moment from New Zealand, where Heidi is going to share with us her story of HCM, which is a bit of a trying story. She's encountered a lot of obstacles in her life with HCM, but she's thriving today, and I can't wait for you to all hear her story. At the end of her story, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions and make comments, so feel free to do so during the presentation, and you will have your questions hopefully answered by the end of the broadcast. So welcome, Heidi, to our Facebook page.
Hi.
So nice to have you here today, and I want to let everybody know a little bit about you and where you're from and your story. So why don't you start telling us, where do you live and how old are you?
So I am 38, nearly 39, and I live in Christchurch, New Zealand, and I am married to Chris, and I have a 10-year-old daughter called Coco and 3 crazy dogs.
I was going to ask if we were going to talk about the dogs because we see them on Facebook all the time. So you have not just the story of early diagnosis with HCM, but you had a lot of complications in your life. And we're going to kind of walk through some of those highlights or lowlights of your experience with HCM. And as we do so, I'd ask you to reflect a little bit upon not only what happened, but how you felt and how you coped through these experiences, so that maybe some other people can gain some knowledge and experience from your experience. So when did you first hear the words HCM or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy?
So the first time I remember hearing it, I would have been probably 9 or 10. Although in saying that, I was diagnosed at 6 weeks with a heart murmur. And then at 18 months, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardio-obstructive myopathy, but I don't recall hearing those words until I was 9 or 10. I was the youngest of 4. None of my sisters had this condition. My father did have the condition. But in those days, we're a small country, not like America, we're tiny. So there was not really a lot known about the condition. So when I was about 9 or 10, I had episodes of syncope, which is like fainting, at school during athletics, and I just couldn't keep up with the other children. I was having trouble breathing. I just didn't feel great. I was pretty fatigued all the time. I remember being tired a lot, couldn't keep up with the children. So we went to a cardiologist, and he scared my mother. He jumped around the room and he said, "This is sudden cardiac death syndrome. She's going to die. This is not good." And my mum just didn't know what to do. So I went on to try all sorts of medications, beta blockers, I think metoprolol, all sorts of different medication was tried. For me, and this is not for everybody, but for me, they didn't work, or they did work. They did their job, but they made me feel worse. So I couldn't live a normal life. So they made me put on a huge amount of weight. They made me just so lethargic that I could not do anything. I would want to do things, but I literally couldn't get off the couch to do them. So it was then decided that I needed a procedure called a myectomy, which is the removal of the abnormal muscle. So I got flown from the bottom of the South Island, which is where we lived, to the top of the North Island, because that is where they did the surgeries. And I had my first myectomy at 10.
So 10 years old, you go from, yes, mom knew you had a heart condition that there wasn't much you could do about at that time, to I'm fainting, I need surgery. You're 10 years old, probably never heard of 10-year-olds having surgery for their hearts, or not commonly anyway. And do you remember how you felt as a child with all of this going on?
I think as a child, children are, and I've seen it with my 10-year-old, children are so resilient that my mother was she's so peaceful and she was so calm about it all. And I knew dad had a zipper, And I knew that Dad had had a surgery. So I thought, well, if Dad's had a surgery, I'll be all right. Like it didn't.
It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, I could see Dad was living a normal life. He was old in my head, so I thought, well, things will be fine. It's not, I don't remember feeling worried or scared or frightened about it. Everyone was so nice. When you're a child, you get lollipops and those sorts. That doesn't happen when you're an adult. But I remember it actually being, as weird as this might sound, it was quite a pleasant experience. It wasn't terrifying. I was so well cared for. The nurses were lovely. It didn't seem like a really big deal, even though it was a big deal.
Okay. So you're good for a while. You feel a little bit better after your myectomy.
Yeah, I felt really good, and actually so good, in fact, that I was able to do a really demanding sport, synchronized swimming. That's a really hard sport for a healthy person, let alone someone with my condition. And I did that from the time I was 10 to about 16, and I entered national competitions. And so the myectomy did work. I know it wasn't a cure, but it certainly, I felt like I didn't have a condition at all. I know I did, but for me as a youngster, I didn't feel sick anymore. I felt great. And that served me for, a good few years. And then when I was about 15, 16, I couldn't get to where I needed to get in swimming. Things just got hard. All of a sudden, things were just hard again. Couldn't do it, couldn't keep up. It wouldn't matter how much more I trained, I couldn't get where I needed to get to. So, and then I just started getting pneumonia, chest infections, just really run down, really sick. Couldn't do my school exams. So it was identified at that point that I needed another myectomy. And
you grew, you went through puberty, you grew, which now we know is a risk of doing myectomy young. We try to wait because once you hit puberty and you go through that growth spurt, we know there's a chance that obstruction can come back, which is exactly what happened to you.
Absolutely. So they said, you're going to be on a waiting list. I said, well, how long is that going to take? They said, well, we can't give you a time frame. So I just had to carry on. I couldn't sit and wait for the surgery and do nothing. I was 17 at the time, and I thought I need to leave home. So I moved to Australia, a different country, and I was there for about 8 months. They had strongly recommended that I didn't move, but I had to keep going. So I had a good job and good friends, and then I just got so sick. So come about 8 months, I was so sick. I collapsed in the middle of town and had a really bad episode and had to be hospitalised in the Gold Coast Hospital. And then I had to get an urgent flight home, and I literally within 10 days had another myectomy. Before myectomy, I couldn't even walk to the toilet. I was half the size I am now. I was so frail, and I had let it go on too long, to be honest. And my mother and I think probably hadn't pushed enough because we hadn't been in the system long enough to understand that we needed to push a little bit harder to have had that myectomy a bit earlier.
So in New Zealand, just to educate those of us in America and around the world, honestly, those who are watching this, what is the healthcare system in New Zealand? Socialized medicine?
The healthcare system's pretty amazing. I think we're pretty lucky here. So you pay taxes and they go towards your healthcare. So part of being a New Zealander is we get free healthcare. However, if you have private healthcare, you can get seen quicker. But transplants are not done, and my condition really, you would get better looked after in the public system than you would private.
Got it.
They treat us seriously, so I have had really good care. However, I guess because we are a small country, there is sometimes a waiting list for things until it gets critical.
Understood. Thank you for that explanation. So you have your second myectomy, which isn't something most people want to hear about twice, but you did pretty good for a couple of years until that day when you were 25. What happened?
Yeah, from the time I was 18 to 25, things were great. I recovered very quickly from the myectomy. I was back at work after 6 weeks. Life was great. I was working 2 jobs. I was determined that I was going to own a house by the time I was in my early 20s. And I was biking to work. I think it was about 5 o'clock in the morning. It was a very cold day, not good for patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It was freezing. I probably wasn't dressed well enough. And I had a cardiac arrest on my push bike. And I was probably 5 minutes away from the hospital. So I was extremely lucky.
Wow.
And a taxi driver found me, and he did not know how to do CPR. So he called an ambulance, and I was extremely lucky that I was found at that point. My parents got the knock at the door from the policeman that no parent ever wants, that your child is not good. And it was touch and go for a while. I was put into a coma for 2 days. They thought most certainly that I would have brain damage because I had been left so long. But I proved them wrong. And I think because I have got extreme amount of determination and I have got a really positive attitude, which I think has helped me the whole entire way through this journey, is that after 6 weeks, again, I was back at work. I did have some memory issues for a while, but they came right. My friends laughed. We had a lot of laughs. You've got to laugh in these situations because if you don't laugh, you spend a lot of time crying. So they would bring in the same magazines to the hospital each day, and it would be like the first time I've ever seen them. So there were a few laughs. It was 50 First Dates. If you've seen that movie, that was me.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Having had a stroke and a little bit of brain damage myself, we are allowed to make brain damage jokes about our own memory and how we have to get it back. So it's a little bit of gallows humor. Excuse me. Okay, they got that off for me. Sorry about that. Okay, so you're 25. You've recovered from a sudden cardiac arrest after 2 myectomies and a couple of days in a coma, and you're back to work. And you're 6 weeks post-op. So you go on a blind date?
Oh, yeah. So I had these lovely friends that I was going to meet for dinner, and I turned up for dinner, and I'm not in my best shape. I'm on beta blockers. I'm quite ragged looking. My hair had all fallen out from the cardiac arrest. I wasn't probably in the best space, but they said, oh, we've got a date arriving for you. And I said, really? I'm 6 weeks out from a cardiac arrest. I don't know that I'm ready to meet anyone. Anyway, my now husband turned up. We had a blind date, and yeah, the rest is sort of history. And we were married fairly quickly because I think having had that life-changing experience, in my head, I didn't think it was serious, although there must have been a piece of me that knew it was serious because I was like, right. I said to him on the second date, I want to get married and I want to have a baby. He's like, that's fairly forward for a second date, but that's okay. I'll take that. So, yeah, the rest is sort of history. We were married a year later, or engaged, then married, then a child a year later. So things were sort of good for a while. And then I got pregnant with Coco, and we were meant to be doing IVF treatment so that the gene could be taken out. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. There's a special name for that type of
pre-implantation genetic diagnostics. Or
that's the one. Mm-hmm. So we have the gene MYH7, K825Q is our gene that's been identified. So we were meant to be having IVF, and we weren't quite ready to have a child, but we were planning to do that at some stage. And then somehow one got past the goalie, and I was pregnant with Coco. So the first probably while it was fairly stressful. There was lots of counselling, there was lots of talking. You're going to have this child. What happens if they have the condition? And all of those things. So it wasn't enjoyable at the start because there was so much worry and, we were frightened and all of those sorts of things. But we had a wonderful cardiologist who said to me, Heidi, do you ever wish that you weren't born? And I said, no, not at all. Despite all of the hiccups along the way, I think you're given the life that you are meant to have. So, and I thought, well, if I have a child with this condition, I understand it, I know about it. The medical side of things is changing and growing all the time, especially thanks to Lisa and her team. But, a lot of there's a lot more awareness than there was even when I was a kid. So I was like, yep, that's fine. So we just carried on. And she's beautiful and she's healthy and she's now 10. And the pregnancy was pretty smooth. At 20 weeks, I did go into cardiac arrest. So that wasn't ideal. And I got shocked about 8 times. I forgot to say, when I had my cardiac arrest, they put a defibrillator in. So I was fairly lucky at that I had that, because that saved me on several occasions. So that wasn't ideal, but I had the defibrillator, so it saved me.
And Coco got a shock in utero, and there was no adverse effects. She's fine.
No. There was I think it was between 6 to 8 shocks, all just to try and get me out of rhythm, to try and get me back. And it just took a while. So I think I was hospitalized for a couple of nights, but it was okay. Once you get used to having had shocks, which I was used to them, it's not so frightening. The first one's probably the worst.
Okay. So sometime around, we figure 2014-ish, you start getting involved with the HCMA, and I think we had an original talk. I don't know if we were Skype originally or what we did.
No, I think it was definitely on email. We had talked because I had just started to feel really unwell again. I'd had kind of periods. I'd had quite a few shocks from the defibrillator over the years, but I kind of got used to those. So that was, for me, still not really in my head. I still wasn't really that sick because I had the defibrillator. It saved me. It kept shocking me. I was fine. I was the cat with 9 lives. It wasn't going to be no big deal. I was still head in the sand a little bit. And yeah, probably that helped, but it didn't help long term. So if I hadn't had Lisa in my corner pushing me or telling me what I needed to do, it might be a very different story today. So where were we at?
So we're up to about 2014, and your tricuspid valve is not doing so well now.
So part of so I had sort of carried along. Coco was about 3 actually, and I kept going back to the hospital saying, I don't feel well, there's something wrong. They're like, no, everything's fine. They tried to say I had slip discs in my neck. There was all sorts of things. I'm like, no, it's more than that. I just don't feel great. So it was discovered, and by this stage, my defibrillator was almost exiting out of my left breast. So something really wrong was happening. So I went to my cardiologist and I said, something's wrong. And I said, this has happened. It's like just about out of my left breast. And he said, no, something is wrong, Heidi. This is not good. And he had me in for surgery straight away. I had a staphylococcal infection in there, which had caused that to happen, which could have been extremely serious. Well, it was actually serious. And they had to remove my defibrillator straight away, all the leads. Then I had to stay in hospital for a period of time where they put a temporary defibrillator in my neck because it was too unsafe for me to be out in the community without one. And they couldn't put it back on the side because of the infection. So after that, there was a bit of toing and throwing, and they put the defibrillator on the opposite side, which is never as effective. However, we had no choice. So that happened. And as a result of that, I was on antibiotics for a period of time, intravenous antibiotics. And because of all of that, that caused further damage to my heart. So I already had a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart, which had myectomy 2 times, which is not good. Well, they were good because they fixed it for a period of time, but scar tissue, then we had an infection, more scar tissue. I'd had electrical issues the whole time as well, cardiac arrest issues. So we're talking, it was kind of just another thing. Having that surgery and that infection also caused my tricuspid valve to be leaking. We did not know when I'd got that final defibrillator in on the other side, we didn't know that I had a leaking tricuspid valve. So we left the hospital thinking, right, we're good now. That's fine. I kind of carried on. And then 3 years sort of after that, or no, maybe a couple of years after that, I was like, I still don't feel great. And then I went to them, and then I was told, you've got a leaking tricuspid valve. So then we were back on the open heart surgery circuit again, and I was getting that repaired. So I had an open heart surgery 3 years ago, but prior to that surgery, I had a email conversation with Lisa about it, because I really think I was at my wit's end. I almost started to think, is there something wrong with me in my head? Because I just felt so terrible, and I kept going back.
New Zealand accent crossed that one over. Was there something wrong in your head? Was it a physiological problem versus a physical problem?
Because I had kept going back and kept going back, but no one would hear me. No one would listen to me. My voice wasn't being heard. So I started to think, is this in my head? Am I making this up? Mm-hmm. And I knew that I wasn't, but when you are so sick, you're tired as well, you're thinking, I really just, and nothing's happening, and you're like, you just start to think, is there something wrong with you, upstairs? So after that, I talked to you, and I just said, I don't know, and you're like, you just need to keep pushing. So I did. I kept pushing, and I went back, and they're like, right, you now need surgery. So we had the third open heart surgery. The tricuspid valve was repaired. We all thought we were on to the winning golden ticket. From that surgery, I ended up with a small leaking valve, another valve that was leaking, which would be no big deal in a healthy heart, but it was a big deal in mine. Permanent atrial fibrillation, pretty much on and off, and complete heart block. So things were not great after that surgery like we'd hoped. So I kind of carried on. Throughout all of this, I managed to work full-time and have a really good job. So I think a lot was to do with my positive attitude, because I thought there's a lot of things in this life that I can't do, but one thing I can do is I can do my job, and I can do it well. It was a sitting down job. I'm very lucky for that. I wasn't a physical job. So I was able to throw everything I had into that. And
Let's pause there for a second, because now I'm going to interject with my side of the story from here.
Okay.
So I get this request from New Zealand to Skype, and I think you and Chris were on that Skype call.
Yes.
So I'm looking at records with you, and you looked very much like me. The numbers looked close, the anatomy looked close. I'm like, oh my goodness, this heart's not going to last. And we had to have this conversation, and you went, but I don't want anybody at work to know, and I don't want to stop working. And I'm like, honey, you need to really talk to your team about evaluating you for transplant. And how long did it take from like that time to getting the appointment? It was a couple of weeks, and they really started taking me seriously.
So I think November 2017, I was really not good. I think I'd had another cardioversion for the 8th time to try and get rid of the atrial fibrillation. They weren't working, and they said, we're not going to do any more treatment. By that stage, I was on amiodarone, and that was a short term. For someone of my age, I'm 38, it was a short term thing before transplant, really. So they were like, right, well, we can't do anything further medically for you. Transplant's really your only option. At this point, I was like, oh, I'm not sick enough for transplant. I don't think I need a transplant. Then I talked to Lisa, and it was lucky that I talked to Lisa, because I think for me, I was still in a period of huge denial. And that could have killed me, that denial. So I think it's really important denial's good sometimes for you to get through a situation, but I don't think it's, at some point you have to face reality, and it's better to face it sooner rather than later, because later could be too late.
Exactly. So they took you seriously. You listed.
So I listed in April last year. So that was just after Easter. So the Friday after Easter. And I was on the list 107 days. So I'm 6 months, just over 6 months out from transplant now, 188 days.
188 days, and she's been keeping a video log every day diligently on Facebook with her progress, which has been pretty amazing. You did say something to me earlier that I do want to bring up. to anybody who's viewing this later, and that is, understanding where your symptoms are and some of the things you did to acclimate to the heart that you had and make accommodations. You used to have your daughter carry your purse for you.
So I thought that I was a really good master of disguise, that I obviously was getting sick, but I did not want to admit to anyone that I was getting sick. So my daughter would carry my handbag. She would vacuum for me. I would pay her pocket money to vacuum for me. And so she thought it was great. So nobody really knew that there was, well, I thought no one knew that there was anything wrong and that I was, I would park. I would go to the supermarket. If I couldn't find a part, I literally would drive home. Or if I couldn't find one close to the door, I would drive home. And I literally would just started not socializing, just finding every excuse that I couldn't go out because I was just too tired. I didn't want to tell people, I didn't want to, I thought the minute that I admit to this condition, then I'm giving in, and I was frightened of what that meant for me. Because I didn't know anyone other than Lisa that had had a transplant. I didn't know how it all worked in New Zealand. I was, pretty terrified. But the good thing about this group is I met another girl from New Zealand who we're very good friends. And she is 16 months out. So she's 10 months ahead of me. So she has helped me along with Lisa, go through this process, because it's not... Getting a transplant isn't a cure. It's basically, it prolongs your life, which
changing one set of problems for another set of problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you have something sitting in front of you in a bag, and I have something sitting in front of me in a bag. So let's show everybody what we have sitting in front of us in bags. We have our hearts in bags. Mine is cut side to side, and Heidi's is cut more in a, as the heart actually fits together. You can see the thick walls. I'm pointing to the screen like you can see it, but you can actually see the walls in there. It's not real easy to see. Oh yeah, there you go. You got your chunky little guy there. No cavity. There's no cavity left in her heart, and that's after 2 myectomies. That is a muscle-bound heart. Now let's have a reality moment here in terms of statistics. Approximately 3% of those with HCM will go to the point of transplant. It's not common for us. However, when there are no other options available, there is atrial fibrillation present, there is post-surgery and an exacerbation of symptoms, there's diastolic dysfunction, there's all these different things that we can't get around. That's one of the times that it's necessary for transplant. In my case, I was a low output heart failure, meaning I wasn't pushing out any blood. We have different reasons for going to transplant, but it's only 3% of us. It's a small number of the total population of HCM. So those of you who are watching this and you're like, oh, there's 2 people with HCM talking and they've both had transplants, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you're going to go with this as well. But we tend to have very interesting pathways with our HCM. So let's be clear that it's not everybody.
And my father lived till he was 74, and he only had 1 myectomy when he was 30, by one of the pioneering surgeons here, who was named a Sir. So he never really looked back. He didn't have any issues. He pretty much had a great life from the time he was 30, and then I think either 60 or 65, he had a heart attack, and then things went downhill for him. And then, but he was getting older, so I think for him, he didn't realize what was old age and what was his condition. And maybe he may have chosen to have a transplant. I don't know. It's, but 74 is great. And he didn't have a huge amount of medical intervention until those later years.
And so Dad and you were the only ones in the family with HCM?
So his mother had it.
Mm-hmm.
Dad had it. His sister had it.
Mm-hmm.
His sister's son has it. And I'm the only one from 4 girls that has got it.
The coin flips heads or tails each time. So it's a 50-50 shot each time. It's not 50% of offspring, which is kind of a strange way of looking at it, but it's true. So you have been through just about all. When we talk about the pathways of HCM, we start with knowing your genotype. You know your genotype, your myosin heavy chain, myosin MYH7. So then we go with symptoms, and you had symptoms at different points in your life. You've had myectomy. You tried medication. You developed atrial fibrillation. You had cardioversion for your atrial fibrillation. You went on amiodarone, the strongest drug that we have, and then you went to transplant. Girlfriend, you've been through it all, and a cardiac arrest while pregnant. You get like an extra credit for that one because that's just insane that you were able to survive that. But here we are today. It is January 24th, 2019, and you have survived all of that. How'd you do it? Where did the strength come from?
I think that all of us with this condition are given something extra in our personality. I honestly believe it, because we do cope with adversity. We do cope. Sometimes I don't cope, but they're only temporary moments in time. And I remember the thing that I hold on to every time is nothing lasts forever. It is only temporary. I'm only temporarily going to feel like this, and then it passes. And I think you need to surround yourself with positive people. You need to surround yourself with a good support network. You need to admit when things are going wrong, not live in denial. That's not good. And you need to stay positive, whether that's hanging out with your girlfriends, whether it's watching soppy DVDs, whatever. You need to find your thing that makes you happy and talk to people. And the biggest thing I think everyone can do is talk, really.
And that's what we have within the HCMA in a number of different places. We have the message board from years ago, which is still operational today, but we have the Facebook groups, and we can talk amongst ourselves. And there are other communities that we might belong to as well for transplant or for ICDs, etc. I think the concept of sharing experiences is healing, and it's inspirational. I'm inspired by my clients here at the HCMA every day. Your story inspires the heck out of me because, I've been through some pretty nasty stuff. So have you, but we're both still here and we're both still smiling about it. And we can make really bad jokes about, having a change of heart or, trying to die on people all the time.
And I think that's the really important thing is we're not alone. We have the group. So I think it's important. I've made some great friends from this group. So I'm really thankful for that, because it's nice to have someone that is, they may not have walked exactly the same journey, but they get it. They get the whole thing.
They do. I will tell you, one of my favorite pictures of all time is a picture that you and Laurie sent me from your hospital room where the two of you were together, and for whatever reason in my brain, one of you was in Australia and the other one was in New Zealand. I'm like, oh my God, they're both in New Zealand. Oh my God, they're both going to the same place. They have each other. I was so happy that you had each other there. And I said,
well, it's only thanks to you that we met. So, she's one of my really good friends now. So yeah, I've just been in Auckland this week, so I got to hang out with her. So yeah, it was good.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So we have some comments here from some people who've been watching. Renee just wanted to thank you for sharing your story. And Victoria, who is following our path.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, Victoria is trying to head to transplant. We're having some insurance issues here, and I have to work on that one. She's on my list of things to do. She says, you look fantastic. So glad to hear your story. And another one of our double-hearted friends, Amy, is sending you 2 hearts. So, Amy. So we have this amazing community. We have these shared experiences. But Heidi, you've been through so much, and you really have done it with grace. And one of the things that I found inspiring about you to begin with was that thing that you say, we all have that resilience. You were a little bit of a workaholic beforehand. And you're like, I can't quit work. I need to be productive. And we're cut from that same cloth, but at a certain point you do have to say, I need to pause and put me first so that I can stay here to do more.
I'll have you know, it is 6 months and I'm not back at work yet. I am, it's still, whilst I feel good, and I know looks can be deceptive, sometimes I do look good, but I feel, it's still been a massive journey to get to this point. And I think because I have lived a little bit in denial with this condition and with all the procedures that I've had, I have never actually stopped and taken a breath. It is taking me a little bit longer to recover, I think, from this, because I have not stopped to take a breath. So I am taking that breath now, because I literally get one chance to do this recovery and one chance to do the recovery properly. And I won't go back to work too soon to cause my health any jeopardy, because I don't want that for myself, and I don't think it's fair for the people around me that have supported me to get here. So I am taking my time to get back to where I need.
Very glad that you are not following my lead on that one, because I didn't do that part as well as I should have. In reality, I was working from my bed. I wasn't doing a lot of work, but I was doing a little bit of work, and I actually came back at the 6-month mark. In honesty, I don't believe I was fully healed until 14 months. That was when I went, aha, now I know exactly what normal is supposed to feel like, or at least I think I do. So take your time, go back.
Yeah, they're big on saying that it is definitely the first 12 months is crucial. And so for me as well, I live in Christchurch, so I have to fly to get my biopsies and those sorts of things. So, and I have a 10-year-old who is at a tweenie stage. So I have that to manage as well because of this that's happened. She's always very good in a crisis, but there's a little bit of aftermath that comes after the event. So there's that to manage as well, which is all perfectly fine and perfectly normal. But it has to be the right time for my health, for everything to go back. I don't want to go back and cause myself sickness or illness, and I just want to get myself a little bit stronger.
That's very, very smart to do. Now, we didn't discuss this in advance, but I know it's out there. So from the girl who didn't want to say anything at work, because then people would know something was wrong, you've become a bit of a national celebrity in New Zealand, sharing your story and promoting organ donation. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
So I have been private about my health my whole life, because I thought if people knew, then it would sort of define me, and I didn't want the condition to define me. So I worked really hard at pretending that there was nothing wrong with me when there was. So when I went on leave from work, I said I was going on annual leave, and then it went to extended leave, and I still didn't tell anyone. And then I've done a blog, and so I just announced the day after transplant, I did a video and said I've had a transplant. And that's how the majority of people found out, because I couldn't have the conversation prior, because it was just too much because at that point I was literally surviving. So I just couldn't do anything extra. There was just no capacity for me to have questions, to have people drop in. All of that was just too much. So yes, it got announced, and then the blog started. And really the intention of the blog was just for my daughter to follow it. However, now that I can look back in 6 months, from the 6-month mark, that's been really good for me, because when I'm having a day where I think, I'm just not getting ahead fast enough, or I'm just not doing where I want to be, I can look back and go, well, actually, I have come quite a long way. I have done this, so that's good. So I have had a few interviews. So it started off with a radio interview. I think I was maybe 5 or 6 weeks out from transplant. Oh, no, maybe I was 3 months. I can't remember. Sorry, all the dates kind of roll into one. So I had an interview on the radio, and then from that I went on to the newspaper, our local newspaper.
Hold on 1 second here. I got it. I have to nuke somebody here. They'll go away. Sorry.
No, that's right. So I had a radio interview, and then I had an interview for our local newspaper, and then on our local news, because we have a day here called Thank You Day, which is a day to honour donors, just to say thank you, and we go out and we do things with our family, like it might be a walk or we do whatever. So there was that, and then a bit of a snippet on kind of like a little short documentary, I guess, on another news program, and then in the national newspaper as well. And I'm really trying to promote organ donation, because I don't know if it's the same in America, I'm not sure, but in New Zealand we have got an extreme shortage of donors. There's a lot of cultural issues here around it. So yeah, and for us, we don't have a register. Basically, you put it on your driver's license and you say yes or no, you want to be a donor, but that essentially does not mean anything in New Zealand. So literally, it is your family that make the decision.
Yeah, we'll probably need to get some legislation in your country, build a registry, because that's where you're going to have the biggest change come. You know, we have issues here in the United States, but we do have infrastructure, we do have a system, and I do believe it's gaining in popularity, and the number of signed donors is growing. However, there's always a need for organs, and unfortunately, it's actually very difficult to become a heart donor. So it's the mechanism in which you die. My sister was a donor, and she gave her kidneys and her liver after dying from HCM, and then I turned into getting a heart donated because I needed it. So the stories of donation are absolutely, breathtaking when you look at the lives that are saved from lives that will be lost no matter what happens to the organs. So we just need to get out there more and talk about how important it is to sign up as donors. I mean, right now, it's out there. Everybody in the world knows it. If anything were to happen to me tomorrow, take whatever you need. I don't need it anymore. Please.
Oh, absolutely. I think all of us are probably like that.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I think if the donor families happen to watch this at some point and see what we're both doing with the gifts that we've been given, they'll understand that their gift was well thought out, and we appreciate it. And hopefully more people will get that opportunity. Okay, we have a couple more hearts being sent to you. Michelle is sending you some double hearts. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I can't read because my glasses are screwed up. Marita, sorry. They're very dirty glasses today, sorry. Sending you a heart there. So I'm going to wrap up here from Jersey in the rain and answer these phone calls that have been trying to pop through while I've been trying to talk to you. Oops, hold on. Brittany has a question. I'm trying to get our pediatric office in town to offer echoes and EKGs for young athletes for starters. Brittany, we need to talk, because that's really not a good approach to identifying hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in the masses. In the state of New Jersey, we now include the American Heart Association 14-point screening for heart disease in all children. We don't want to propel the myth that HCM is an athlete's problem. It's a human problem. In fact, it goes beyond humans, because cats and gorillas and all kinds of other animals have HCM too. But we don't want to lead people to think that it's somehow tied to athletic activity, lack of athletic activity. It is a genetic disorder, and we need to make sure that all physicians are checking all children in their well-child exam for the signs of heart disease in the young. So stay tuned, because we're going to be launching an initiative on how to have that happen in every state. We're putting that together for you right now. But thank you for sharing your thoughts. We do have the educational posters that are going to be delivered tomorrow, so we can start shipping them out all over the country and get people a bit more in tune with what HCM is and provide some passive education that way. So thank you for your comments. Okay, Heidi, any final thoughts to your HCM brethren before you go back into New Zealand life?
No, I don't think there's probably, I just think that you need to keep the lines of communication open and talk to the people that know. So if you feel that things are not right or you're not getting the right attention or information that you need, call Lisa. Call her, because she knows. She's seen so many people with this condition, and it displays itself so differently in all of us that you can't really compare one story to another, but Lisa's probably seen it all. So I think it's really important to, if things don't feel right or you don't feel right, you need to keep pushing. You have to be your own advocate, because no one else will do it for you. And by not doing it and by sitting back, it could be extremely detrimental. And I think if I'd had my head buried in the sand any longer, I would have been in a very, very different position to what I am now. So I'm super grateful.
As am I, that you called when you did and that you took the action that you needed to. I think what's really important for people to understand is the HCMA's role is not to do something for you. It's to illuminate a path. It's your job to walk that path. If you get the information and you're too afraid to act upon it, it's highly likely that something bad could happen. So take information, don't let fear guide you, let logic guide you, and go to the people who know the best and fight for yourself. If they're not listening to you, take a step back, reorganize your thoughts, and communicate what you're feeling and what your concerns are. And if you need help, we're here to help you organize your thoughts and really focus on what needs to be done. And it's because, if you told me 23 years ago that I'm going to sit here in an office in New Jersey and I'm going to not help one person, I'm going to help multiple people in New Zealand get heart transplants. What's that about? So it happens. It's real. We're one global world in a way, and we have to make sure that everybody gets this information and has access to the highest quality healthcare that they can for where they happen to reside on this planet of ours. So Heidi, your story is incredibly inspiring, not because of your transplant, not because of your 2 myectomies, not because of your ICDs, not because of your ICD discharge while pregnant, but because you went through it all and you're smiling and you're productive and you're happy and you're living your best life. So thank you for inspiring so many other people.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share my story. And I'm so grateful for you. Every day I'm grateful for you, Lisa. You know that Lisa was talking to my husband just as I was being wheeled into the OR.
I did. I called him.
And Lisa got the 2. I had 2 trial runs before the final transplant, and Lisa got calls at goodness knows what kind of hours of the morning it was for her, but it was horrendous hours of the morning.
I know, but I like to talk to you before you go in, so that was really, really nice. It was really, really nice. Okay, well, thank you for sharing your story. I know this one's going to go over really well, and I'm sure you're going to be getting some really good feedback from your HCM community friends.
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for watching today, and have a great day.
See you.
Bye-bye.